Asterisk asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl collapsing at the bus stop. What happened next broke his heart. Asterisk asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. It was a typical rainy afternoon in downtown Boston. The kind where the city skyline looked like a blur, painted in silver and gray, the streets slick from a steady drizzle. As cars splashed through the puddles, their headlights cutting through the mist, one figure stood out against the gray. A man in a sharp blue suit, a coffee cup clutched in his hand, though it had long since gone cold. Michael Anderson, the CEO of a top tech firm, had been running on autopilot for months now. His days were filled with endless meetings, back-to-back calls, and presentations, all stacked like a never-ending to-do list. But something about today felt different. The bustling city, full of life and purpose, seemed to be moving on without him, and the silence in his mind was deafening. He was tired. Tired in a way that no amount of sleep or coffee could fix. He had everything: money, power, success, but none of it brought him peace. As he waited at the bus stop, something caught his eye. A small figure, drenched in the rain, moving slowly through the mist. She was just a little girl, no older than 6, her coat clinging to her tiny frame, too big and worn. Her shoes were soaked through, slapping against the sidewalk with each hesitant step. Michael watched her for a moment, thinking she was simply another lost soul in the city. But then, she stumbled. Her legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed on the ground, her body folding like a fragile marionette with cut strings. The small bag she was holding fell from her hand, spilling out its meager contents: 2 slices of bread wrapped in napkins, a bruised apple, and a dented thermos. No one stopped. The people around her continued on, wrapped in their own worlds, hurrying to avoid the rain, oblivious to the little girl lying on the cold pavement. Michael froze. He wasn't sure why, but something in him refused to look away. He didn't think. He just acted. He dropped his coffee cup and rushed to her side, kneeling on the wet ground beside her. His hand reached out, trembling as he took hers, cold and fragile, almost lifeless. Hey, it's okay," he said, his voice softer than he expected. "You're all right." Her eyes fluttered open, and for a brief moment, their gazes met. There was fear in her eyes, and something more. "I have to bring dinner home. Mommy's really sick," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Michael's heart stopped. The words hit him like a punch. Everything around them blurred as he processed what she had said. He looked down at her small, fragile body, her thin coat, the way she trembled despite the rain, and something inside him cracked open. The world moved around him, but in that moment, nothing mattered but her. He gently gathered her up in his arms, her small form weightless, and without a second thought, he called for his driver. The sleek black car pulled up to the curb, and Michael, holding the little girl, stepped inside. Her small hand clutched the collar of his suit, and her breathing was shallow. He didn't ask her name. Not yet. He didn't want to scare her. All he knew was that he couldn't let her go. Not here. Not like this. As they drove through the rain, the city outside faded into the background. Michael didn't say a word, his mind racing. He could hear the steady rhythm of the windshield wipers and the soft hum of the engine. But all he could focus on was the little girl in his arms, the weight of her presence shifting something deep inside him. He wasn't sure what was happening, But he knew that, in this moment, everything had changed. Asterisk, asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl collapsing at the bus stop. What happened next broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Michael's mind raced as the car sped through the rain. He could feel the small, trembling body of the little girl still curled in his arms, her breath shallow and faint. He hadn't asked her name yet. He hadn't wanted to frighten her. But in that moment, he realized just how much he had already stepped into her life. Her tiny hand gripped his coat tightly, as though clinging to him for more than just warmth. The ride to the hospital felt like it took forever, each minute stretching out in slow motion. The steady hum of the engine, the rhythmic beat of the windshield wipers, and the occasional soft whimper from the girl were the only sounds breaking the silence of the car. Michael's heart ached with a strange urgency he couldn't explain. He wanted to know more. He wanted to understand why she had been out in the cold alone, why no one else had helped her. And then there was her mother. The little girl's words echoed in his mind. "Mommy's really sick." It made his stomach tighten. What had brought them to this point? Michael had worked with CEOs, billionaires, and politicians all his life, and yet nothing had prepared him for this. The loneliness he felt seemed to dissipate as his focus narrowed entirely on the child in his arms. It was as though her fragile presence was filling a void in him he hadn't known existed. As the car pulled into the hospital parking lot, Michael knew he wasn't just going to drop her off. This wasn't some cold, professional exchange. Something had changed inside him, and he couldn't just walk away. He couldn't ignore her, not after everything he had seen. The driver opened the door, but Michael didn't wait for him to speak. Without a second thought, he picked up the girl and cradled her in his arms, rushing through the rain to the emergency entrance. The hospital lobby was bustling with people, but none of them noticed the man in the expensive suit carrying a little girl who was clearly in need of help. The nurses at the front desk looked up in surprise as he approached. "She needs help," Michael said, his voice hoarse. "Please now." One of the nurses moved quickly to assist him, her face softening when she saw the state of the girl in his arms. "What happened?" she asked gently. But Michael couldn't answer her immediately. The words felt stuck in his throat. He was no doctor, no hero. He was just a man who had seen a little girl alone, helpless, and had done the one thing he could. He had helped her. "Her name is Ava," Michael finally said, his voice cracking as he looked down at the small, pale face in his arms. "She said her mother's really sick." The nurse nodded and motioned to a nearby stretcher. "We'll take it from here," she said, leading Michael to a quieter area where they could assess Ava's condition. Michael hesitated for a moment, his eyes never leaving the girl. Ava's breathing was still shallow, and her small body was so frail, too frail for someone so young. He realized just how little he knew about her life, and yet he felt an overwhelming need to be there for her. The nurse turned to him. "You're doing the right thing. She'll be in good hands now." Michael nodded, though his mind was far from calm. He had to know what had happened. How had she ended up alone, shivering in the snow, clutching a thermos and a piece of bread? But for now, he had to let go. He had done what he could. Ava was safe. Michael stepped back and watched as the nurses worked, their movements swift and efficient. The sound of medical equipment and soft voices filled the room, but Michael barely noticed. His thoughts kept returning to her words. "Mommy's really sick." As the minutes ticked by, his mind kept circling back to one thing. What was he going to do now? This moment had already changed him, and he knew it was far from over. The more he thought about Ava, the more he realized something deep inside him had shifted. He had helped her, yes, but in doing so, something had awakened in him that he couldn't ignore. And as the nurse left to check on Ava's condition, Michael stood there in the quiet, heart heavy, with the knowledge that he could never go back to the life he'd known before. Asterisk. Asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl collapsing at the bus stop. What happened next broke his heart. Asterisk. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Michael paced back and forth in the hospital waiting room, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts and questions. It had been an hour since Ava was taken in for treatment, and he hadn't heard anything yet. His usual business meetings, the ones he had been able to attend with ease, felt like a distant memory. His phone buzzed several times, but he didn't bother to check it. He couldn't focus. He couldn't think of anything but the little girl in that sterile hospital room. Ava's tiny face kept flashing in his mind, her pale skin, the fear in her eyes, her frail form clinging to him in the cold. "Mommy's really sick," she had whispered. And those words haunted him more than he expected. Michael's life had been meticulously controlled for years. He had built a successful company from the ground up, making deals and shaking hands with some of the most powerful people in the world. But no business deal, no merger, no amount of money had ever made him feel this way. He felt helpless, small and vulnerable, in a way he hadn't felt since his childhood. He had been raised with a cold, distant father who believed that emotions were a weakness. Success was the only thing that mattered, and love was a luxury for others. Michael had spent his life chasing that success, believing that if he could just be powerful enough, important enough, he could fill the emptiness inside him. But nothing had worked. And now, a little girl had come into his life and shaken everything he thought he knew. He had thought the world was a cold, indifferent place, and that people were simply players in a game of survival. But Ava had shown him a different side of the world, a side filled with raw emotion, vulnerability, and humanity. She had reminded him of something he had long forgotten: the power of compassion. Michael's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. He turned and saw the nurse who had been with Ava earlier. She smiled at him warmly, but there was a trace of sadness in her eyes. "Mr. Anderson," she said softly, "Ava is resting now. She's stable, but she's been through a lot." Michael felt a wave of relief wash over him, but it was quickly replaced by guilt. "Is she okay?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "She's been malnourished and is extremely dehydrated," the nurse explained. "We're doing everything we can to make her comfortable, but there's a lot we still don't know." "Her mother," she trailed off, and Michael could see the weight of the situation in her eyes. "Her mother is very sick," he said quietly. "Is there anything I can do to help?" The nurse hesitated for a moment, as if considering how to answer. "You've already done more than you realize, Mr. Anderson," she said finally. "Ava is lucky you were there. Most people would have just walked on by. She's been through a lot, but she's a fighter. We'll make sure she gets the care she needs." Michael nodded, but his mind was already racing again. He couldn't just walk away. He couldn't just leave her here, alone in the hospital. He knew he had to do something, anything, to make sure she had a better life than the one she had known. Ava's words echoed in his mind. Mommy's really sick. He had seen the exhaustion in her eyes, the hopelessness. It reminded him of his own feelings growing up, of not being able to rely on anyone, of always having to fend for himself. He couldn't let her feel that way. He couldn't let her fall through the cracks of a broken system. Is there any way I can stay with her? Michael asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The nurse looked at him with a hint of surprise but nodded. We'll make an exception, she said, but we need to keep a close watch on her. She's been through a lot. Michael didn't care. He wanted to stay. He needed to stay. He had never felt this way before, so determined, so committed to doing whatever it took to help someone. As he walked into Ava's room, the sterile smell of the hospital hit him, but he didn't mind. The only thing that mattered was the small figure lying in the bed, her face peaceful for the first time since he had met her. He pulled a chair close to her bed and sat down, watching her sleep. For the first time in a long time, Michael felt a sense of peace, one that had nothing to do with power or success, and everything to do with the simple act of being there for someone who needed him. The silence in the room was comforting, and Michael allowed himself to relax for the first time in what felt like forever. As he sat there, watching over Ava, he realized something profound. This wasn't just about helping a little girl. This was about saving himself. He had spent his whole life building walls around his heart, believing that if he stayed cold and detached, nothing could hurt him. But now, sitting beside Ava, he realized that the true strength came from opening up, from allowing himself to care. And in that moment, he understood that this was just the beginning of a much bigger journey for both of them. Asterisk, asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl collapsing at the bus stop. What happened next broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Michael sat quietly beside Ava's hospital bed, the soft beep of the machines her only companion, and his. Her condition was stable now, but the doctors had said it would take time for her to fully recover. Time he wasn't sure she had. The more Michael learned about Ava, the more he realized just how much she had been through. The girl's mother, a woman named Sarah, had been battling a long-term illness. She had been in and out of the hospital for months, barely able to care for her daughter. And now, with Sarah too sick to even lift her head, Ava had been forced to fend for herself. Michael had asked the nurse for more information about her background, but the details were scarce. All he knew was that the little girl had spent her days in a run-down apartment building, doing whatever she could to help her mother, even when it meant skipping meals and going without warmth. Ava's body was frail, her small frame barely able to keep up with the demands of survival. She had no one to protect her, no one to care for her, and no one to make sure she was safe. And now here she was, lying in front of him, in a sterile hospital bed, with no family to speak of, and no one else to rely on. Michael couldn't help but feel responsible. He had helped her, yes, but he didn't know if that would be enough. As he sat there, watching her sleep, his mind wandered back to his own childhood. He had grown up in a home filled with silence. His father had been distant, obsessed with business and success, and his mother had been too busy with her own life to pay him much attention. The emotional distance in his home had left a mark on him, one that he carried with him into adulthood. He had grown up learning that love was something to be earned, not freely given. But here, now, with Ava, he realized something had changed. Something had awakened inside him. He wasn't sure when it had happened, but he couldn't ignore it. For the first time in his life, Michael felt like he wasn't just living for himself. He felt like he had a purpose, like he could help someone who needed him. He wasn't sure what that meant yet, but he knew he couldn't walk away. He couldn't leave Ava alone in the world. He had to do something. He had to make sure she was safe. Michael looked at the sleeping girl beside him, her face soft and peaceful, free from the worry that had once consumed her. He reached out and gently brushed a lock of wet hair from her face. The feeling of her small hand, so fragile in his, tugged at something deep inside him. He couldn't leave her like this. No matter what it took, he was going to help her. He was going to find a way to make sure she had a future, a life that was filled with love, safety, and security. For the first time, Michael realized that success wasn't just about wealth or power. It wasn't about closing deals or earning accolades. It was about being there for someone who needed you. It was about making a difference in the life of a child who had nothing. Michael sat there for hours, watching over Ava as she slept. His mind was spinning with possibilities, ways he could help her, ways he could take her in and give her the care and love she deserved. But it wasn't just about giving her a home. It was about making sure she felt safe, that she felt seen, that she knew she wasn't alone in the world. As the night stretched on, Michael made a decision. He was going to fight for Ava. He was going to fight for her future. He wasn't going to let her slip through the cracks, not on his watch. The next morning, Michael made calls to social services, to doctors, to legal teams. He didn't know how long the process would take, but he was ready for it. He was determined. As he sat back in his chair looking out the hospital window, the weight of the decision settled on him. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Ava. It was about giving her a chance to grow up in a world where she wasn't just a survivor, but someone who had the love and support to thrive. He had spent so many years building his empire. But now, for the first time, he felt like he was truly building something that mattered. He wasn't just saving a little girl. He was saving himself, too. Asterisk. Asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl collapsing at the bus stop. What happened next broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. As Michael sat in the sterile waiting room of the hospital, waiting for the final paperwork to be processed, he couldn't help but reflect on the past few days. Ava had come into his life like a storm, sweeping him out of his comfortable, controlled existence and forcing him to confront emotions he had long buried. He had always thought of himself as a man in control, someone who could handle anything life threw at him. But here he was, sitting in a cold hospital room, his thoughts consumed by a little girl who had no one to turn to. Ava had been released from the hospital a few hours ago, but Michael wasn't sure what to do next. The social workers had been kind, but the bureaucracy was overwhelming. There were forms to fill out, questions to answer, and endless decisions to make. But in the end, Michael knew one thing. He couldn't just walk away. He had to take responsibility for her. He had already made arrangements to bring Ava back to his penthouse, but the reality of what that would mean was starting to sink in. He was about to become her guardian, her protector. The weight of that responsibility felt both overwhelming and liberating. He had been so focused on building his empire for so many years chasing success at the expense of everything else, that he had forgotten what it meant to truly care for someone. But now, with Ava in his life, he realized that this was the most important thing he had ever done. Michael thought about his own upbringing, how he had grown up in a cold, emotionless household where success was the only thing that mattered. His father had been a powerful man, but emotionally distant. His mother had been too focused on her own life to offer him any real love or guidance. And so, Michael had learned to rely on himself, to push through the loneliness and isolation. But now, with Ava, things were different. She had come into his life like a wake-up call, shaking him out of the numbness he had been living in. For the first time, Michael understood what it meant to care for someone, to love someone unconditionally. And as he made his way out of the hospital with Ava, he felt a strange sense of peace. She was fragile, yes, but she was also resilient. Despite everything she had been through, she still had hope in her eyes. Michael could see it in the way she clung to him, trusting him completely, even though he was still a stranger. As they left the hospital and made their way to his car, Michael realized that he had no idea what the future held. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of failure, of losing everything he had worked for. He wasn't afraid of the unknown, because now he had something worth fighting for, someone worth fighting for. Ava was no longer just a little girl he had helped on a cold winter's day. She was his responsibility now, and he would do whatever it took to give her the life she deserved. He had spent so many years building his empire, but now he understood that the real measure of success wasn't the size of his bank account or the power he wielded in the business world. It was the ability to make a difference in someone's life, to offer love and protection where it was needed most. As he drove through the city streets, the weight of his decisions settled on him. He knew there would be challenges ahead, legal battles, emotional struggles, and moments of doubt. But he also knew that he wasn't alone. He had Ava, and together, they would navigate this new chapter in their lives. The city around him seemed to fade away as he focused on the road ahead. Michael wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was certain. This was just the beginning of a journey that would change both of their lives forever. Asterisk, asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl collapsing at the bus stop. What happened next broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and meetings. Michael found himself in a world that was completely unfamiliar to him. Parenting, guardianship, social services, and legalities that were far beyond the scope of his usual business dealings. He had never been one to shy away from challenges, but this was different. This wasn't about closing a deal or making a successful investment. This was about a little girl who needed him in ways he couldn't fully understand. Ava was adjusting to her new life, though the scars of her past were still visible in the way she clung to him, the way she hesitated when others approached. Michael had known that it wouldn't be easy, but he hadn't expected just how deep the impact would be. The first few days in his penthouse had been a whirlwind. He had arranged for a private tutor to help her catch up on schoolwork, hired a child therapist to help her process the trauma, and made sure she had everything she could possibly need. But despite all the material things, there was an emotional gap that could not be filled by money or luxury. Ava had been through too much, and Michael could see it in her eyes. He had come to understand that this was not just about providing for her. It was about rebuilding the trust she had lost. Michael had been successful in everything he'd done, but nothing had prepared him for the depth of the responsibility he now carried. He spent hours reading books on parenting, talking to experts, and trying to figure out how to best support her. Every time he looked at her, the weight of the situation hit him. He wasn't just her guardian, he was her lifeline. He had to be everything to her: protector, provider, and most importantly, someone she could trust. Ava was still quiet, still unsure of the world around her. The first time he tried to talk to her about her mother, she had gone silent, her eyes filling with tears. "Mommy's really sick," she had whispered again, as if trying to make sense of the words. Michael had learned quickly that, while he could provide her with everything she needed in terms of material comfort, it was the emotional connection that would take longer to build. He wasn't sure how to fix the broken parts of her life, but he knew he had to try. He had never been good at showing emotions, at connecting with others on a deeper level. But for Ava, he was willing to try. Every day, he made a conscious effort to be there for her, to listen when she wanted to talk, and to give her space when she needed it. Slowly, she began to open up, just a little. One afternoon, after a therapy session, she had crawled up into his lap and whispered, "Do you think Mommy's going to get better?" Michael had been taken aback by the question. He didn't know the answer. Didn't know if her mother's illness would get better or worse. But he didn't want to break her heart by telling her the truth. Not yet. Instead, he held her tight and said, "We're going to take it one day at a time, okay? I'm here for you. Always." And for the first time, Ava had smiled. Just a small, tentative smile, but it was enough to make Michael's heart swell. Over the next few weeks, things began to settle into a routine. Michael would take Ava to school in the mornings, where she was still quiet, still cautious around the other kids. He had enrolled her in a private school, hoping that a smaller, more nurturing environment would help her adjust. In the afternoons, they would spend time together reading, playing games, or just sitting in silence. Ava was still very reserved, but there were moments when she would open up, sharing small bits about her life before everything changed. Michael had also started spending more time with her outside of their home. He would take her to the park, to museums, or sometimes just for a walk in the city, trying to show her that there was more to life than the pain she had known. One day, as they were walking through the park, Ava had stopped to look at a small family having a picnic. She watched them for a few moments, her eyes soft and wistful. Michael stood beside her, wondering what she was thinking. "Do you think we could be like them?" she asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "Like a family?" Michael felt a lump in his throat. "We are a family," he said, kneeling down to look her in the eye. "We don't have to look like anyone else's family to be one. We're already a family, Ava. And I promise, I'll always be here for you." Ava looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of uncertainty and hope. For the first time in weeks, Michael felt like they were making progress. Slowly, very slowly, Ava was beginning to believe that this could be her new life, that she wasn't alone anymore. The journey ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but for the first time, Michael didn't feel so lost. He had found his purpose, and that purpose was to be there for her. He wasn't just her protector, he was her family, and together, they would find their way. Asterisk, asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl collapsing at the bus stop. What happened next broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. It had been 6 months since Michael had taken Ava into his care. And though the journey had been challenging, there were moments when he could see her beginning to bloom. There were still setbacks, of course. There were days when Ava would withdraw into herself, haunted by memories of the life she had left behind. But there were also moments, small victories, where Michael could see the change. Ava was starting to trust him more, and as the months passed, her walls seemed to soften. She had started to smile again. Genuine smiles, not the forced ones she had given him in the beginning. And although she wasn't yet fully open about her past, Michael could sense that she was beginning to heal, bit by bit. One evening, after a long day of school and therapy, Michael decided to take Ava out for a special treat. It had been a particularly good week for her. She had made friends at school, and her therapist had mentioned some significant improvements in her emotional well-being. Michael knew that these small steps were huge for Ava, and he wanted to celebrate her progress. They walked to a nearby ice cream shop that had quickly become one of Ava's favorite places. As they stood in line, Michael noticed Ava's excitement. It was something new, something he hadn't seen before. She was bouncing on her feet, her eyes wide with anticipation. "What are you going to get?" Michael asked, his voice light and teasing. Ava looked up at him, a wide grin spreading across her face. "The biggest sundae they have," she said, her voice full of excitement. Michael smiled. He hadn't seen her this happy in a long time. He ordered their sundaes, and they found a seat by the window, overlooking the park. Ava dug into her sundae with enthusiasm, and for the first time in months, Michael felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He watched her, mesmerized by how far she had come since the day they first met. He had been a man who built his life on control, on success, on numbers. But none of that had ever brought him the kind of peace he felt watching Ava enjoy her sundae. "Do you think Mommy would like this?" Ava asked suddenly, looking up at him with wide, innocent eyes. Michael paused. He wasn't sure how to answer her question. He didn't know how to talk about her mother yet. But he knew that Ava needed to. He reached across the table and gently took her hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "I think she would," he said softly. "I think she would be really proud of you." Ava's face softened, and for the first time in a long while, Michael saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. He had learned that healing was not a linear process. There would be days when it seemed like Ava was slipping back into herself, and there would be days when she made incredible strides forward. But Michael was learning to be patient with her and with himself. The more he understood her, the more he realized that love wasn't something that could be rushed. Ava needed time to process everything she had been through. It was hard for him to imagine the kind of pain she must have felt, but he knew it was his responsibility to make sure she never felt alone again. The following week, Michael received a call from the social worker handling Ava's case. They had made some progress on the legal side, and it looked like the adoption process could be started soon. Michael had been dreading this moment. As much as he had grown to love Ava, as much as he had promised to care for her, the reality of adoption brought with it a flood of emotions. Was he ready for this? Was he ready to be a father? Could he really give her the stability she needed for the rest of her life? The questions swirled in his mind. But when he looked at Ava, sitting beside him at the kitchen table, her face full of hope, he knew the answer. He had already started to be her father. It wasn't about the paperwork or the official titles, it was about being there for her every day. It was about the quiet moments they shared, the small victories, and the trust they had built. Michael had never imagined his life would look like this. But now, as he looked at Ava, he couldn't imagine his life without her. "Do you want to hear some good news?" Michael asked, his voice steady but warm. Ava looked up at him, her eyes bright with curiosity. "What kind of good news?" she asked. Michael smiled, his heart full of emotion. "They're starting the adoption process. It's official now, Ava. You're going to be my daughter." Ava's face lit up, and she jumped out of her seat, throwing her arms around him. "Really? I'm really going to be your daughter?" she asked, her voice trembling with excitement. Michael held her tight, his heart overflowing. "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, you are. You're already my daughter, Ava." It was in that moment that Michael realized just how much he had changed. He had spent his entire life focused on success, on power, on control. But nothing in his life had ever felt more meaningful than the simple act of being there for Ava, of giving her the love and support she had always needed. He wasn't just saving her, she was saving him too. Together, they were building a family, a future, and a life filled with love, something Michael had never believed was possible. And as they sat there, holding each other, Michael knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where love and family were at the center of everything. Asterisk, asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl collapsing at the bus stop. What happened next broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The days after the adoption process began were some of the most surreal for Michael. He had taken steps forward in ways he never imagined possible. And with every passing day, his bond with Ava grew stronger. Yet, the deeper they got into this new life together, the more Michael realized that the journey wasn't just about making sure Ava felt safe. It was about him rediscovering himself, shedding the hardened layers of the man he had been for years. Michael had spent his entire adult life focused on building his career, on securing wealth and power. He had known success, but what was it all worth if it didn't come with meaningful connections, with love? Sitting in the living room of his penthouse, watching Ava carefully assemble a puzzle on the floor, Michael couldn't help but wonder how he had gotten so far away from what truly mattered. Ava had made remarkable progress. She had begun to open up more, to share her thoughts, her fears, and even her little dreams. Every conversation they had, every shared moment, felt like a victory. There were still hard days, days when she would retreat into herself, days when the memories of her mother's sickness would flood her thoughts. But Michael had learned to be patient. He knew healing wasn't linear, and for Ava, each step forward was a huge accomplishment. One particular afternoon, as Michael worked at his desk, he noticed Ava sitting quietly by the window, looking out at the city. She had always been so full of energy, so full of questions, but there was something different about the way she was sitting today. It was as if she was waiting for something, or perhaps trying to make sense of the world. He stood up and walked over to her, sitting down beside her on the floor. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently, his voice soft, trying not to disturb her thoughts. Ava didn't immediately respond. Instead, she pointed to a small, framed photo on the windowsill. It was a picture of Michael, taken years ago when he had first started his company. A photo of a younger, more idealistic version of himself, standing in front of his first office. Is that when you were happy?" she asked, her voice small and tentative. Michael was taken aback by the question. He thought about it for a moment. He had always been driven by the idea of success, of reaching the top. But he hadn't truly understood what it meant to be happy until recently. He hadn't even realized how much he had neglected the things that really mattered in life. I thought I was happy, he said slowly, turning his gaze to the photo. But now I know that happiness comes from the people we love, from the relationships we build, and I've realized that I never truly had that. Not until you came into my life. Ava looked up at him with wide eyes, her expression soft and filled with curiosity. Really? She asked, her voice filled with wonder. Michael smiled, his heart swelling. Yes, really, he said, taking her small hand in his. When you came into my life, you gave me something I didn't even know I was missing. You made me see that love is the most important thing of all. Ava's face lit up, her eyes sparkling. She smiled. And for the first time in a long time, Michael felt like he had made the right choice. It wasn't about the business deals, the stock market numbers, or the fancy buildings he had built. It was about this moment, about giving Ava a sense of belonging, of family, and making sure she knew she was loved. That was the true success he had been searching for all along. The next day, Michael took Ava to the park, and as they walked around, he noticed how much more comfortable she seemed in the world. She was no longer the shy, reserved girl he had met months ago. She was beginning to embrace her place in this new life. And Michael couldn't be prouder. They spent the afternoon playing games, talking about everything from school to what they wanted for dinner that night. It felt so normal, so right, that it almost made Michael forget the hardships that had brought them here. As they sat on a bench, eating ice cream together, Ava looked up at him and said, I like it here, Michael. I like being with you. Michael's heart melted. This was the moment he had been working toward. This was why he had fought so hard to give Ava a better life. It wasn't just for her. It was for him too. He was finally living a life filled with love, with meaning, and with the kind of connection he had never known before. As they made their way home that evening, hand in hand, Michael realized that everything had changed. He had started this journey to save Ava, but in the process, he had saved himself. And together, they were going to build the future they both deserved. Asterisk, asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl collapsing at the bus stop. What happened next broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The morning air was crisp, and the city around Michael seemed to bustle with energy. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed within him. He had spent the last several months adjusting to a life that was no longer about business meetings or stock market numbers, but about a little girl who had transformed his world. Ava, once a shy and reserved child, was blossoming under the care and attention he had given her. But Michael knew the journey wasn't over. Ava had made incredible strides, but there were still days when she would pull back into herself. Moments when the past would catch up to her and make her retreat into a shell. He had been patient with her, letting her take things at her own pace. But today something felt different. Today, as they sat at the kitchen table, working on her schoolwork, Michael noticed that her eyes kept darting toward the window, as though she was waiting for something. What's on your mind? He asked softly, not wanting to startle her. Ava hesitated for a moment, her small fingers tracing the edge of her pencil before she finally spoke. Do you think my mom would be proud of me? The question hung in the air, a weight that Michael hadn't expected. He had never been the emotional type, never known exactly how to answer questions that went beyond the surface. But in that moment, looking at Ava, he realized how much she had grown since the first time he had met her. The pain she had endured, the uncertainty in her heart, It was all still there, but she was learning to move past it, to trust again. Michael smiled warmly, his heart aching at the vulnerability in her voice. "I know she would be proud of you," he said, his voice steady, but filled with conviction. "You're strong, Ava. You've come so far, and I'm proud of you too." Ava's eyes softened, and she gave him a small, hesitant smile. "Really?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "Really?" It was a moment of connection, a quiet understanding that passed between them. Michael realized that, while Ava had come into his life as someone in need of protection, in many ways, she had helped him heal too. She had given him a new sense of purpose, a reason to look beyond his own struggles and focus on something greater than himself. And as he watched her pick up her pencil and continue working, a feeling of peace settled over him. He wasn't just her guardian, he was her family. The next few weeks passed in a blur as Michael and Ava adjusted to their new life together. Michael had always been a man of action, focused on achieving goals and solving problems. But parenting was different. It wasn't something that could be fixed or solved in the way he was used to. It was a process, one that required patience, understanding, and a willingness to put someone else's needs before his own. He learned to listen more, to be present in a way he had never been before. And with every passing day, he saw more of the real Ava emerging, more confident, more willing to take risks, more willing to trust him and the world around her. One Saturday morning, as they walked through the park together, Michael noticed Ava's hesitation as they approached the playground. She had always been reluctant to join the other children, often watching from the sidelines, unsure of where she fit in. But today was different. She looked at him with a determined expression. "I'm going to play," she said, her voice firm. Michael smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "I think that's a great idea," he said, giving her a gentle nudge toward the swings. Ava hesitated for a moment, then slowly made her way to the group of kids playing nearby. Michael watched her from a distance, his breath catching as he saw her tentative steps turn into confident strides. She joined in the game, laughing and chatting with the other children, her earlier reluctance forgotten. It was a simple moment, but it felt monumental. For the first time, Michael saw Ava truly embrace the world around her, a world she had once feared. She was no longer the quiet, withdrawn girl he had met months ago. She was starting to become the person she was meant to be. As the day drew to a close, Michael and Ava sat on a bench, watching the sunset. Ava leaned her head against his shoulder, her small body relaxed in a way it hadn't been before. "Thanks for being there for me," she said quietly, her voice soft but sincere. Michael's heart swelled with emotion. "You don't have to thank me," he said, his voice gentle. "I'm just glad I'm here with you." And in that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Michael realized something profound. He had spent so many years chasing success, building a life that looked perfect on paper, but it had never felt real until now. This was what truly mattered. Ava had changed his life in ways he couldn't have imagined. She had given him a sense of purpose, of meaning, that he had never known before. Together, they had created something beautiful, something worth fighting for. And as they sat there, side by side, Michael knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. The journey was far from over, but they had come so far already. And with every step, they were building a life that was full of love, hope, and a future that was brighter than anything Michael had ever dreamed of. Asterisk, asterisk, a lonely CEO finds a little girl collapsing at the bus stop. What happened next broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone, Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The weeks had passed since Ava's adoption was finalized, and life had become more stable. The changes, both in Ava and in Michael, had been subtle but powerful. Michael found himself enjoying moments that had once seemed trivial. Simple things like sharing dinner, helping Ava with her homework, and taking her to the park had come to mean more to him than any business deal or achievement. The transformation wasn't just in Ava, it was in him as well. He was no longer the man who lived solely for success and ambition. As he looked at Ava now, he saw a reflection of his own growth. She had blossomed into a confident, happy child who was starting to trust in the world again. Still, the road ahead wasn't without its challenges. Ava was now enrolled in a new school, and though she had made friends, there were days when the weight of her past crept up on her. Michael had seen the flashes of sadness in her eyes, the moments when she would retreat inwardly, as if trying to protect herself from a world that had once hurt her. But those moments were becoming fewer and fewer. One afternoon after school, Ava came home visibly upset. Michael could tell something was wrong, but he didn't push her. He let her sit with her thoughts as they had learned to do. And after a while, she came to him, sitting on the couch beside him. "Michael?" she asked quietly, her voice uncertain. "What is it, Ava?" he asked gently, setting down the book he had been reading. She hesitated for a moment, her hands twisting in her lap. I think I'm starting to remember more about my mom," she said, her voice wavering slightly. Michael felt his chest tighten. He knew this moment would come, eventually. He knew that Ava would have to face the memories of her past, the loss of her mother, and the life she had lived before coming to him. But he wasn't sure he was ready for this conversation. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Ava nodded slowly, her eyes downcast. "I remember when she used to sing to me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She had this soft voice, and it made me feel safe. But then she got sicker, and I couldn't hear her sing anymore. I missed her voice. Michael's heart ached as he listened. He had never known how to be the comforting figure Ava needed when it came to her mother's memory. He had been focused on making their new life work, on helping her heal from the trauma. But this was different. This wasn't something he could fix with his usual determination. He reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, giving her a reassuring squeeze. "I know you miss her, Ava," he said, softly, "and it's okay to feel sad about that. But remember, your mom loved you so much. She wanted you to be happy, to be safe." Ava wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know," she said quietly, looking up at him. I wish I could have kept her safe too." Michael's heart broke for her. "You did everything you could, Ava. You were so brave. But now you have me, and I'll always be here for you, no matter what." Ava nodded, her eyes still filled with unshed tears. Michael could see that it was going to take time for Ava to fully heal, to come to terms with the memories of her past. But he also knew that with each conversation like this, they were building a stronger foundation of trust, of understanding. Michael wasn't just her guardian anymore. He was her family, the one person she could rely on to help her navigate this complicated world. That evening, after dinner, Michael took Ava to the park. Just the two of them. They didn't talk much sometimes. Silence was the best companion in moments like these, but as they walked along the path, Michael could see the change in her. She wasn't the broken little girl he had first met. She was becoming someone stronger, someone who could face her past and still look forward to the future. As they sat on a bench, looking out at the sunset, Michael realized that the most important thing he could do for Ava wasn't to solve all of her problems, but to be there for her, to show her that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. "I'm glad you're my daughter," Michael said, his voice filled with warmth. Ava looked up at him, a small but genuine smile crossing her face. "I'm glad too," she said, her voice soft but full of meaning. In that moment, Michael knew that everything he had done, everything he had sacrificed, had been worth it. The journey ahead would still be difficult, but they would face it together, as a family. And for the first time in his life, Michael understood the true meaning of success. It wasn't about wealth or power. It was about love, connection, and the chance to make a real difference in someone else's life. As the sun set behind them, Michael felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that Ava was no longer alone, and neither was he. Asterisk. Asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl. Collapsing at the bus stop. What happened next broke his heart. Asterisk. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The weeks had gone by, and Michael had become more and more convinced that the decision he made to adopt Ava was the most important one he had ever made in his life. They had started to build a routine, one where they both found comfort in the small moments they shared. They spent evenings together, watching old movies or just talking about their day. Ava was beginning to open up more, and although there were still moments when she would become withdrawn, there were far more moments when she would smile and laugh, her genuine joy filling the air. It had been an emotionally taxing journey for both of them, but the bond they shared now was undeniable. Michael was constantly reminded of how much this little girl had changed his life. He was no longer just the successful CEO of a large company, driven by wealth and ambition. He was a father now, with all the joy and responsibility that came with it. And as Ava grew, so did he. One evening, Michael was working late in his office when he heard a soft knock on the door. He opened it to find Ava standing there, her expression uncertain. She had been so quiet lately, but something about her eyes tonight made him stop everything he was doing. "Hey, what's on your mind?" Michael asked, setting aside his papers and walking toward her. Ava hesitated for a moment, wringing her hands together. "Can I talk to you about something?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael immediately dropped his stern business tone, giving her his full attention. "Of course. What's going on?" Ava's eyes filled with a mixture of hesitation and longing. "I've been thinking a lot about my mom," she said, the words coming out slowly, as if each one had to be carefully chosen. Michael's heart sank, but he kept his voice steady. "I know it's not easy, Ava. I'm here for you, no matter what." She nodded, her small face a mixture of sadness and uncertainty. "I miss her," she said quietly. "I don't know if I should still miss her, because you're here, and you take care of me now, but I still feel like a part of me is missing." Michael felt a lump form in his throat. He had known this day would come, but hearing her speak those words, hearing the pain in her voice, brought it all to the surface. He knelt down beside her and gently lifted her chin so their eyes met. Ava, he said softly. It's okay to miss her. You're allowed to love your mom, and I'm not here to take her place. I'm here to be your family now, to love you in the ways that you need. Ava looked at him with wide eyes, as if she were hearing it for the first time. You mean it? She asked, her voice trembling. Of course I do, Michael replied, his voice thick with emotion. You are my daughter, Ava. You always will be, and you don't ever have to choose between loving your mom and loving me. Your heart has room for both. Ava's lips trembled as she fought back the tears. I don't know what to do with all of this, she whispered. The love I feel for her, and the love I feel for you. It's like, I'm scared if I let myself love you too much, I'll forget her. Michael took a deep breath and gently pulled her into his arms. You don't have to forget her, he said, stroking her hair gently. You're allowed to hold both of those loves in your heart. She will always be a part of you, and so will I. We don't have to let go of the past to build a future together. For a long moment, they sat there, with Michael holding her close. He knew this was just one of many conversations they would have about the past and about the future. But in that moment, it felt like the first true step in Ava's healing. She wasn't just learning to trust him as her guardian. She was learning to trust herself. To trust that it was okay to love fully, without fear. When Ava finally pulled away, she smiled. A small but genuine smile that warmed Michael's heart. I think I understand now, she said, wiping her eyes. Thank you. Michael smiled back, his heart full. Anytime, kiddo. Anytime. As they sat together in the quiet of the room, Michael realized that while the road ahead would not always be easy, they were making progress. One conversation at a time. One day at a time. He had never imagined that his life would change so drastically, but now he couldn't imagine it any other way. Ava was his family now, and together they would face whatever challenges came their way. Michael had spent his life focused on achievements, but now he understood that the true achievement was this: helping Ava heal, being there for her, and giving her a future filled with love, something she had never truly had before. This was the family he had always longed for, and as he looked at Ava, smiling up at him, Michael knew he would do whatever it took to make sure she had everything she needed to thrive. Asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl. Collapsing at the bus stop, what happened next broke his heart. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Months had passed since Ava became part of Michael's life, and with each day, their connection deepened. Michael had watched as Ava transformed from a withdrawn and uncertain girl into a confident and joyful child, full of curiosity and life. But as much as things had improved, there were still moments that tested their bond. Moments when Ava would retreat into herself. Moments when the past would creep back into her mind. One evening, Michael found himself sitting in the living room, staring out the window as he reflected on how far they had come. He had come to love Ava like a daughter. But more than that, he had come to understand that love was not just about giving. It was about sharing the weight of the past and the hopes for the future. And the journey, he had realized, was not just about Ava's healing. It was about his own. He had spent so much time focusing on his career, on building his empire, that he had neglected the very thing that brought real fulfillment: family. Sitting there, watching Ava draw in her sketchbook at the dining table, He could feel the deep sense of peace that had settled over their home. Ava had made tremendous progress, but every so often, she would ask about her mother. Michael knew this day would come, but it didn't make it any easier. Ava had always been so quiet about her past, and Michael had done his best to be there for her in ways that counted. But when she spoke about her mother, he could see the unresolved sadness in her eyes. He had always told her that it was okay to miss her, that it was okay to love her mother, and that he would be there for her no matter what. But even as he said those words, Michael couldn't help but wonder if he was enough to fill the emptiness Ava had felt for so long. That night after dinner, as they sat in the living room, Ava suddenly put down her sketchbook and turned to Michael. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Michael?" she began, looking up at him with a mixture of curiosity and vulnerability. "What do you think it means to be a family?" Michael paused, taken aback by the question. It was one they had never really discussed, but it was something that had been on his mind. He had become her family, but what did that really mean? "I think," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully, "that being a family is about being there for each other, no matter what. It's not about being perfect or always knowing the right thing to say. It's about showing up every day and making sure the other person knows they're not alone." Ava's eyes searched his face, as if trying to understand what he meant. "But what if? What if I'm not enough? What if I can't be the daughter you want me to be?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Michael's heart broke at the words. He had never once doubted that Ava was more than enough, she was everything. But he knew that her past had left scars, and sometimes those scars made her doubt her place in the world. He reached out and gently took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "Ava, you are more than enough. You are my daughter, and nothing will ever change that. I'm not here to replace your mom, and I don't expect you to forget her, but I'm here, and I will always be here, to help you carry the weight of your memories, and to help you build new ones together." Ava's eyes filled with tears, and Michael pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly as if to make sure she knew he wasn't going anywhere. She clung to him, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was comforting, like a promise that they would get through whatever came their way, together. After a while, Ava pulled back and looked up at Michael with a soft smile. "I think I understand," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "It's not about being perfect. It's just about being there for each other." Michael nodded, his own heart swelling with love for this brave girl who had become his world. "Exactly," he said, his voice full of warmth. "And you've been there for me too. We're a team, Ava, and we'll always be." The weight of the moment hung in the air, but there was a sense of peace that followed, one that had taken time to build, but was finally here. Ava had come a long way, and so had Michael. The family they were creating wasn't built on perfection or expectations. It was built on trust, understanding, and love. As they sat together that night, Michael realized that the journey wasn't just about healing from the past. It was about moving forward together. And for the first time, he felt certain that they were exactly where they were meant to be. The future was theirs to build. And Michael knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them with strength and love, hand in hand. Asterisk. Asterisk. A lonely CEO finds a little girl collapsing. At the bus stop, what happened next broke his heart. Asterisk. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The years had passed, and Michael looked at the life he had now with Ava and saw nothing short of a miracle. When he had first met her, she had been a broken little girl, alone in the world, with nothing but fear and uncertainty in her heart. But now, as he watched her laugh with her friends at her high school graduation, he realized just how far they had come together. He had been there for every step of the way, helping her rebuild her confidence, teaching her how to trust again, and showing her that love and family were not just empty promises. Ava had grown into a strong, compassionate young woman. She had flourished not just academically, but emotionally. The girl who had once barely spoken was now an articulate, confident teenager ready to take on the world. Michael couldn't be prouder of the person she had become. The years had not been without their challenges. There were still moments of doubt, moments when Ava would pull back into herself, haunted by memories of her past. There were times when she would question her place in the world, moments when she felt like she didn't deserve the happiness that Michael had worked so hard to provide. But those moments were fewer and farther between. And each time, Michael was there to remind her that she was worthy of everything good in this world. He had learned that being a father was not about perfection, it was about consistency. It was about showing up every day, even when it was hard, even when the past seemed too heavy to bear. It was about being present in every moment, no matter how small. Michael had spent so much of his life focused on building his career, climbing the corporate ladder, chasing the next big deal, the next big win. But in the end, none of that had mattered as much as the life he had built with Ava. No amount of money, no number of successful businesses could ever compare to the love and fulfillment he had found in being her father. The world had changed in ways he had never expected, but it had changed for the better. Ava had given him a purpose he never knew he needed, and in return, Michael had given her the stability and love she deserved. On the day of her graduation, Michael stood in the back of the auditorium, watching Ava receive her diploma. His heart swelled with pride as she walked across the stage, her head held high, her smile brighter than ever. As she came back to her seat, she looked up at him and waved, her eyes filled with gratitude and love. The crowd cheered, but in that moment, Michael felt like the luckiest man in the room. He had given her the world, but in return, she had given him a life that he never dreamed possible. After the ceremony, they walked out into the warm summer evening, the sun setting on the horizon. Ava looked up at Michael, her eyes shining with excitement for what was to come next. "What now, Dad?" she asked, her voice full of anticipation. Michael smiled, his heart full of love. "Now we see where life takes us," he said. "Together, every step of the way." As they walked toward the car, hand in hand, Michael realized that this was just the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead: college, new experiences, new struggles, but they would face it all together. No matter where life took them, he knew one thing for certain: he would always be there for Ava, just as he had promised all those years ago. Their story wasn't just about the past. It was about the future. It was about the family they had created, the bond they had built, and the love that had turned a lonely, broken man into the father he was always meant to be. Michael had saved Ava, but in so many ways, she had saved him too. They were no longer just two people who happened to be in each other's lives. They were a family, a real family, and nothing could ever change that. As they drove off into the evening, Michael looked at Ava and smiled. The future was bright, and together, they would face whatever came their way, knowing that they were stronger for having found each other. This was their story, one of healing, love, and redemption. And it was only just beginning.